Hello everyone, my name is Ankit Jain. I welcome you all to my channel Tech Journey with Ankit. In today's video, we will explore few of the interview questions. But in this series, we will be exploring now the questions that can be asked to the experienced professionals as well. In case you are looking for the questionnaires which are for the freshers, please check out the link in the video description. I have already published few of the frequently asked questions to the freshers, or in case you do have the experience in between the range of 0 to 3. But in this series, now onwards, we will be experiencing or we will be discussing the different types of questions that can be asked to the senior developers or to the leads as well. I hope you will also give the same love to this series as well, like others was as too. So without further delay, we can get started. So in case you folks like to have one-to-one connect with me, or if you folks want to download all the questionnaires that I am discussing here, where we do have more than 350 plus questionnaires set, you guys can navigate to the top mat. If you go to the top mat, you will find one option that is the interview prep, where I have put the guide, and in this guide, you folks will get the questionnaires for the different topics. Again, in this set, you will have the questionnaires for the experienced professionals and also for the freshers as well. Definitely, there are more questions for the experienced professionals as compared to the freshers because there is a wide area of to cover for the experienced professionals. You will get more than 350 plus questions at a very minimum price. This questionnaire set will definitely help you to revise your interview questions on a lightning speed. Now, without further delay, we can get started with the topic of discussion for today. In case you folks like to join the community where we do discuss all the different types of questionnaires that you do encounter in your interview preparation, please join the Telegram group channel as well. The link for both you will get in the video description. Now, the first question that we will be discussing for today, and which is a very common question again, whenever you guys are working on the integration, how you can implement the retry call out. For example, you are making the call out to the external system. What is call out again? From the Salesforce, if you are making a call to the external system, it is referred as a call out. But in case that call out has been failed, then how you go and retry the call out? And specifically, whenever you're trying the call out, there might be a question that you want to have the specific amount of gap in between the callouts. So how you go and implement that kind of a behavior. Many of you have told me that this question has been asked, but you are not finding any concrete solution over the web for this question, which is very simple. Again, if you go and try to implement it, only two things you have to take care while answering this question. You have to go and implement the retry mechanism, and second one, you have to add the delay between the retry. So how you go and implement the retry mechanism, let's try to understand this with one example that I tried to put up here. Again, the steps that I am doing here is the normal steps that we do for the call out, where we go and create the request, set the endpoint, set the method, as well as setting the body. Now, the two important parameters that I am setting up here is the how many number of attempts that you want. Again, you can make it configurable either by using the custom metadata or the custom setting. For the time being, I am putting the hard coded value here, but again, that is not recommended. You can always go and put the custom metadata and get those values. Similarly, how much delay that you want to add. Now, what I am doing here is here I am writing down the loop, which is checking how many attempts has been made. Initial count that I am putting up as 3. Now, the next thing that I am doing here is if the call out is not successful, for example, if I'm not getting the response code as 200, I am reducing the count value to 2. Similarly, initially my count value or the attempt value will be 3. In case after the first unsuccessful attempt, the value will be 2. After that, the next unsuccessful attempt, the value will be 1. And after the another unsuccessful attempt, the value will be 0. Right? Again, as the value turned out to 0, it will not go inside the loop. And after the 3 loops, it will automatically come out. Now, another thing that I want to do here is I don't want to make the call outs immediately. I want to have some delay in milliseconds between those attempts, because ideally the system might be down or there are lots of requests on the system. So I want to add some delay in between those call outs. So how we can add that delay? Again, like in the case of Java or in the case of .NET, we do have the specific methods to add the delay. But with respect to Apex, we don't have any direct method to add the delay. So programmatically, what I am doing here is I am taking the current time here and I'm adding some milliseconds in that time. For example, in this example, I am adding the delay of 5000 milliseconds. So what I am doing here is in that method, I am passing that 5000 and the value, and then I am adding the milliseconds here. Then I am again running my while loop where I am not writing down any logic. Basically, this loop will run unless for the 5000 milliseconds, and after that 5000 milliseconds, it will automatically come out from the loop. And as soon as it will come out from the loop, again it will go and try to make the attempt. So by using this simple Apex code, I have make sure that I am retrying the logic, and also I am adding the delay in between the multiple calls as well. This type of question, folks, you can always experience whenever you are going for the interview, because the interviewer will like to evaluate your skills, how you do the error handling, how you do the retry management, and that is what it expected whenever you are going for the interview in case you are an experienced professional. Now the next question, which is again a very much common question, you might have also encountered this question not only in the interview but also in your regular day-to-day work as well. So what is the error that is Apex heap size too large error, and how you can make sure that you are not getting this kind of an error? First, you should know before you answering this question what is actually the Apex heap size error. There and then only you can go and prevent that kind of an operation. Again, if you know the answer for this, please pause the video and let me know the solution for this in the comment section. At least the one part, what is Apex heap size error, or the other part, how you can go and prevent it. I hope you have already put the answer, so let's go and check it out. Apex heap size error typically occur when there is too much data is being stored in the memory during the processing. Imagine that you are making the queries to the record, and you do have around millions of records coming up from that query, and you are storing all those records into the one single list collection. Now your one list collection have the millions of records available in it. Definitely those records will be stored in the memory, and during the processing it will not only impact the performance of your code, but also there's a high possibility of hitting the Apex heap size error as well, right? So this limit that, again, what the Salesforce have done from their end, as we work in the multi-tenant environment, Salesforce have put the governor limits around those heap size as well. Again, these limits are different if you are doing with the synchronous or the asynchronous transaction. For example, if you are dealing with the synchronous transaction, then you do have the limit of 6 MB. In case of asynchronous transaction, the limit is 12 MB. I hope you guys all know what is synchronous and what is asynchronous transaction, right? Synchronous means the real time, and the asynchronous means the near real time. So we do have the different types of governor limits putting up here, right? So how you can avoid now this heap size error? Again, there are few best practices that you can follow to avoid the heap size error. The number one, try to use the minimum or don't use the class level variables to store the large amount of data. Because if you are using the class level variables to store the large amount of data, the value will be available in that variables. Either you are clearing it or the class is getting over, right? And if you are clearing it manually, it's well and good. But in case you are not, which is most of the cases, then the value in that variable will be available until and unless the class is getting removed from the memory. That is definitely not a good practice to go and define the variables which hold the large amount of data. Again, that does not mean that you should not use the class level variable. Only you should not use the class level variable to store a large amount of data. The next use case, which is most recommended from the Salesforce, that is always try to use the SOQL for loop. If you are using the SOQL for loop to iterate over the large number of records, Salesforce will do the heap size, heap memory management for you. And there's a most probably that you will not get heap size too large issues. There's a specific reason why Salesforce have introduced this new loop, so that Salesforce can manage the heap size for you. Next one here is, whenever you are using the constructing the methods and the loop, allow the define the variable in such a way that if that variables are not required outside that condition, then that variable should not be accessible. For example, there is a variable that you required only if the particular if condition goes true, then define that variable in that if condition only, so that the scope of the variable will automatically be ended as soon as you come out from that if block. Same goes for the loop as well, right? If you want a variable to be available inside that loop, then go and define that variable inside that loop only rather than putting it outside the loop, so that programmatically you can manage the heap size very well. So make sure that no unnecessary variables defined, no unnecessary data putting up into the variable, avoid using the class level variable, and the most important thing, whenever you are making the queries, always try to go for the SOQL for loops. So this is the example that I tried to put. If you see in this example, what I am trying to do here is I'm trying to process the 50,000 item, right? If I'm directly executing this query in my list collection, I do have all those 50,000 records at a time. But to avoid this, what I am using here is I am using here the for SOQL loop, so that at a time only 200 records will be available in this list collection. And as I said, Salesforce will automatically manage the heap size for you. So this 200 record, it is relatively a very small size in scope of the 50,000 records that you have to process, right? So always recommend, so folks always remember that it's recommended from the Salesforce whenever you are processing the huge number of records, go with the batch apex. Or if you have to do it in a synchronous way, think about the for SOQL loop as well. Now, the next question here is, how could you implement a retry mechanism for a failed queuable apex? Very common requirement, my queuable apex do get failed very frequently. So how I can implement the retry mechanism into the queuable apex? This question is bit theoretical, but and you should know the answer for this question, because in case you have already implemented it. It's a very new concept again from the Salesforce that has been introduced to manage the retry mechanism for the queuable apex jobs. So what should be the answer for this? The answer for this here is the transaction finalizer. This is a new feature that Salesforce have provided, with the help of which you can directly take the action in both the scenarios, if the queuable apex completed successfully or the queuable apex has been failed. If you want to have some actions defined in case of success and the failure both, then you can take the help of the transaction finalizer, right? What will happen in the transaction finalizer here is, in case of unhandled exception, basically you can again go and either submit the queuable apex for the file for the to retry the logic, or you can do the appropriate exception handling as well. So for example, you are processing one queuable apex, that queuable apex has been failed, you want to do some logging means either you want to write down the data into the custom object, or you want to submit the queuable apex to run one more time, right? You can take the help of the transaction finalizer. I hope you folks already know that maximum number of times we can re-enqueue the queuable apex is 5 times. So transaction finalizer can help you to successfully re-enqueue the queuable apex for the next 5 times. Next point here is, transaction finalizer enables you to attach the actions using the system.finalizer interface. Again, to understand this point, how you can enable or how you can write down the retry mechanism for the queuable apex, let me take you to the code. Okay, this code will help you to understand how you can write down the transaction finalizer. The point here is, if you have to implement the transaction finalizer in your code, you have to implement the finalizer interface. So for example, this is my queuable apex. You can see it is implementing the queuable, but in addition to the queuable, I have to also go and implement the finalizer interface as well. If I am implementing the finalizer interface, then I have to also implement the execute method as well. So don't get confused if there are two execute method. First execute method, it is for the queuable apex, which is having the input parameter as the queuable context. Second in execute method, it is for the finalizer, right, which is having the input parameter as the finalizer context, right? So there are two different execute method. One is for the queuable and second one is for the finalizer. Now the next point that comes into the picture, how you can let the system know if the transaction is failing, they have to go and perform the finalizer option. To do that, what you have to do here is you have to go and create the instance of the finalizer. All right, so here you can see for this class retry limit demo, I am creating the instance of the finalizer. And next very important thing that I am doing here is I am attaching that finalizer as well. Right, once you attach the finalizer, what will happen as soon as this queuable apex has been completed, again completed in both the sense, either in the case of success or in the case of failure, you can go and perform the different actions. Here in the case of success, I am simply putting the system.debug job, but in the case of failure, you can see that I am again submitting the queuable apex. Right, you can do that for the next 5 times, because after the 5 times it will definitely hit the chaining limit. So as you can see in this code just now that I highlighted, our code includes a method, that is the execute method, with the input parameter as the finalization context, mandated by the finalizer interface. If you are implementing this method, it is mandatory to implement the finalizer context method. This method is triggered upon the completion of the queuable job. As soon as your queuable apex is completed, this is the method which will automatically invoke, and it will invoke in both the scenarios, whether it succeeds or it encounters any error. It is important to note that the queuable class implements the finalizer interface, and to attach the finalizer to the queuable apex, we have to use the system.attach finalizer method, with the help of which we can connect a finalizer to the current queuable job. Very important, very less known topic, but nowadays I have seen in the interviews this question has been asked very frequently, because most of the projects started using the finalizer interface for their queuable apex error handling. Now, this is the question that I want you guys to attempt, and let me know the solution for this in the chat box. What are the different ways to invoke the Apex code in the Salesforce? There are many, right? What are the different ways to invoke the Apex code in the Salesforce? Very frequently when I ask this question in the interview, I do get the limited answer that we can invoke it either from the triggers or from the flow, but these are not the only options, right? There are lots of options available in the Salesforce ecosystem to invoke the Apex code. So let me know in the comment section what all different options that you guys can think of from which we can invoke the Apex code in the Salesforce. Next question. How do you implement a asynchronous transaction integration using the queuable apex? Asynchronous integration using the queuable apex means if you have to make the callouts from the queuable apex, how you will do that? If you have to make the callouts from the queuable apex, how you will do that? Just now before we have seen one question for the callout, right? This is nothing but a callout. But if I have to go and implement the similar kind of a callout now from the queuable apex, how I can do that? Again, I hope you already know the answer, because this is again the most repeated asked question. In case you don't, please see this. Right? In case you have to make any call outs from the queuable apex, you have to go and implement another interface, and that is the database.allow callout interface. Right? Only one thing that needs to be written if you are making the callouts from the queuable apex. Right, if you are implementing this interface, then you can write down the complete logic with a similar error handling pattern, the retry pattern that just now we discussed, to make an API call from the queuable apex. Very simple. Only thing that you have to know here is you have to implement one interface, that is the database.allow callouts. Next question. What is skinny table in Salesforce and how they can improve the performance? Again, performance improvement can be a very wide topic of discussion in the Salesforce. Right? There are lots of things that comes into the performance improvement. But one of the key things that many projects do use, again, in case they deals with the huge amount of data, that is a skinny. So what is actually the skinny table? And this question is very common. If you are either a lead or appearing for an architect interview, you definitely come across this question of the concept of the skinny table, or the concept of the custom indexes, or the concept of the SKU as well. So let's go and try to understand the concept of the skinny table first. If you already know what is skinny table, how it can improve the performance, do let me know in the comment section. So what is skinny table? Let's try to understand this in very layman term. So let's take an example of an account object, right? So this is my account object, for example, and in my account object, there are different types of field. There are two types of fields that I can have in the account object, either as the standard field or as the custom field, right? So whenever I go to my object manager, I see all the fields are available under my account object table, right? This is the kind of a view that typically gets by the user. But at the database level, how the Salesforce go and store it? So at the database level, Salesforce do maintain the two standard tables, or two different tables. One is the account table, which is having the standard field. Another which is account table, which is having the custom field. From the user point of view, there is only one table, but when the Salesforce do maintain this at the backend, there are two types of table. One is the standard table, and second one here is the custom table. In the standard table, you will have all the standard fields. And in the custom table, you will have all the custom fields that you have created on the account object. Right? Now imagine that you have to process millions of records. Right? So what the Salesforce have to do, and in your query, SOQL query, you are requesting the data from the standard field as well as from the custom field. So what the Salesforce have to do to go and fetch that data? Internally, Salesforce have to make the joins in between the standard field table and the custom field table, and then share that data with you. Definitely, as a join involved, there will be an impact on the performance of the table as well. Right? So to avoid this, what we do have is the concept of the skinny table. To avoid this, what we do have the concept of the skinny table. So whenever I am requesting the data, either in the form of query or in the form of report or in the form of list view from the standard object or the custom object, I don't want my system should go and make a query, then I should go for the concept of the skinny table. So for each object, as I said, that is visible to you, Salesforce maintain the two separate table. One is for the standard fields and another one is for the custom field. This separation that Salesforce is doing, it is invisible to the customers, right? In case you have to fetch the data from these two tables, definitely you require a join which contains the data from both the fields, right? Again, if you want to omit the join, you don't want to perform the join in between these two tables while fetching the data, then you go and create the skinny table. The skinny table is something which will contain both the kinds of a field and also omit the soft deleted records as well. So whenever you are creating the skinny tables, it does not have any soft deleted record. I hope you guys know what is soft deleted record and what is hard deleted records. Soft deleted record means if the records are available in the recycle bin, they are referred as the soft deleted record. But whenever you do have the skinny table, you don't have any soft deleted records coming up in your query. Right? So what are the different benefits that you will get when you will go for the skinny table? First one here is you are avoiding the joins. As I said, right? To fetch the data, Salesforce have to make the internal join. By using the skinny table, you are avoiding that join. The skinny table that has been provided by the Salesforce, right? It will always in sync with the source table. So when the source tables are modified, automatically the Salesforce will go and modify this skinny table. This is your source table, right? Where you do have the two different table, but Salesforce will make sure that in case the source tables are modified, the skinny table is already modified. Next point here, it is best option to go for the skinny table if your object have greater than 1 million records, or in case in your query you are very frequently fetching more than 1 million records, or in your reports you are frequently fetching more than 1 million records. This point we already discussed, it does not include the soft deleted record, right? So how the skinny table helps to improve the performance in the report or in the query? Basically, a skinny table provides a view across the multiple objects for easy access to the combined data. So it's providing a view basically which is dedicated for your requirement. Okay, it's not a multi-tenant table again, because these tables that you guys can see, account standard fields table or account custom fields table, these are the multi-tenant table. All the organizations, they do use the same table, but when the Salesforce will go and create the skinny table for you, right, this is the table which is dedicated only for you, right? So in this view, you can easily access the combined data. So whenever you are creating the skinny table, you have to make sure that you are using only those fields in the skinny table that you frequently require in your query or in your report. Imagine that there's account object. On the account object, I do have the hundreds of fields, but very frequently I only query 20 or 30 fields. So what I will do, I will take these 20, 30 fields. I will ask the Salesforce support team to create the skinny table. Again, this is a very important point. Again, as a developer, you cannot go and create the skinny table. You have to always ask the Salesforce support to go and create the skinny table for your requirement. You have to give the justification to the Salesforce support why you want a skinny table. The justification will be there are lots of record and it is impacting the performance, right? So you want a skinny table with those many number of fields. Again, if you have to add any new field in that skinny table, you have to again reach out to the Salesforce support. If you have to change the attributes of any of this field, you have to again reach out to the Salesforce support. So Salesforce will not give the management of the skinny tables directly to the developers. It is very much restricted to the Salesforce support only. But Salesforce will make sure that whatever the data that is available in the source table, it is always in sync with the skinny table. So this diagram will help you to give understanding. This is the view of the user. This is how Salesforce will manage the database. And from the database, you can go and create the skinny table. For the today that I want you guys to do attempt, what all the different key considerations and the best practices that you should be following while writing down a trigger in the Salesforce. If you folks are already following my trigger bootcamp series, you already know the answers for this because I do iterate that best practices in every video. In case not, again, do check out the link in the video description and make sure that you guys are solving the triggers as well. Because considering your experience of 3 plus, there is a high probability that whenever you go for the interview, in addition to this type of question, you will also encounter to write down the trigger scenario as well. So do practice the triggers as well in your journey. And as I said, if you folks wants to download the books, do check out the top pent page where you will get the different types of services like the one-to-one call, or you will also get the digital products. There are different digital products which are available here: admin ebook, data cloud ebook, interview guide, LWC notes. I hope this all these ebooks do found helpful in your interview preparations as well. Do let me know your thoughts in the comment section if you are finding this new series helpful or not. Thank you. Have a good time.